Hi everyone, Charles from the Food People here. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Chris Lowe, CEO of the Legacy Park Limited, and innovation chef, food writer, and foundation of Fruition Foods, Anthony Warner. And we're here today to officially launch a very exciting initiative, the Sheffield-based Sustainable Healthy Foods Incubator. So welcome, Chris and Anthony. It's so good to have you here today.
Hello, thank you for having us on.
Yeah, great to be here.
Well, I mean, just to set the scene, we all want to build a better food system, one that supports health, sustainability, and of course, culinary joy, one that provides high quality foods to people of all backgrounds and budgets, one that keeps people from hunger, but without costing the earth. So today, what we're going to do is explore the key role that the Sustainable Healthy Foods Accelerator will play in this critical transformation of our food and drink industry. At the Food People, we're very clear about why we do what we do. We're champions of change driven by our intent to shift the future of food and drink by harnessing the power of trends. And this In Conversation With series is all about talking to others across the spectrum of food and drink to find out more about why they do what they do and how in their way they're championing change and shifting the future of food and drink. So Chris, Anthony, it's a great pleasure to be speaking to you today, as I've already said, and I'd really just like to dive in if we can and start with, this is a really, really exciting project, but can we just start by explaining a bit more to the audience about what the Sustainable Healthy Foods Accelerator actually is?
So at its heart, an accelerator is a kind of meeting point or a marketplace for ideas. What happens is you do a global call out on a challenge to innovators around the world in different disciplines, whatever, they all bring something different to the table. And then you funnel those innovators, you filter them, and you effectively select up to about 10 of the best, sometimes more, sometimes less. And then they bring their innovations to the table, you link them up, if appropriate, with investors, but also they then work to develop their product or innovation, service innovations. You may give them advice on regulatory compliance and some kind of market access or introduction. So it's all about that kind of almost the node or the meeting point of different parties to then produce impact.
Brilliant, that's great. Anthony, anything that you'd add to that?
Obviously, it's I'm a food manufacturing person, and the reason why sort of I'm involved in this and group of consultants called Fruition Foods are involved is because we're all about providing that sort of support to innovators and innovative companies. We are sort of big food company people with that sort of background. I work for Premier Foods and a lot of other big food organisations for a long time. We have a group of consultants with a load of expertise in intellectual property and in regulatory and nutrition and compliance and all those difficult things. And it's about giving that support to innovators who are really going to sort of make the big changes that we really need in our food system.
Brilliant. So what is the accelerator at its heart? I mean, this series is about getting into why this is important. So what is it attempting to do? What is the purpose of the accelerator, if you like?
You sort of outlined it pretty well in your introduction. There are essentially two massive problems in our food system, as far as I can see them. They're things that I've written about for my career as a writer. One is the food system is not making people healthy. There are huge issues with sort of diet-related disease in this country and throughout the developed world as well. And the second is the sustainability and the environmental impact of our food system. The accelerator is about addressing those. Essentially, I think it's probably fair to say, without sort of insulting large companies, large incumbent companies probably don't have the capacity to really innovate at the level that we need them to address those problems. And so the big shifts are going to come from innovators. They're going to come from innovative companies. So it's providing that support to those companies to really make these sort of massive changes we need to address health and sustainability in our global food system.
Okay, so you've given us some seeds, some clues around sustainability and health, and I think we probably all inherently know that they are are the big things that need to transform within our food system. But can you just hit us up with some, what are the current problems, the current hurdles that exist around sustainability and health?
In our food system specifically, I mean, a lot of people listening will obviously be aware of a lot of them. I've written a very good book on sustainability of global food systems, if anyone's interested in that. There are enormous problems in terms of sustainability. The food system is probably the most has the worst impact on our environment of any sort of single factor. It's obviously contributes to a fair amount of carbon emissions, but also, a huge, it's the biggest driver of biodiversity loss and habitat loss. It's the biggest consumer of water and the creator of water stress throughout the world. There are huge there's a huge environmental impact of food, and we cannot address big environmental questions without looking at the food system.
No.
So 70% of the global water consumption comes from our food system. 25% of all climate emissions. Unless we address, without addressing food at all, by 2050, food will have caused 2 degrees of global warming on its own. If all other emissions are taken away, food will cause that on its own. So you can't address climate change without talking about food. And then in terms of health, it's extraordinary, sort of the impact of food on health, on cardiovascular disease, on type 2 diabetes, on all these sort of massive, hugely impactful sort of things are related to the food system and can be addressed by the food system by making some fairly simple changes, but things that have proved incredibly challenging for our food system to address. We're not making enough progress on food environmentally and in terms of health that we need to. So we need sort of big step changes to make that happen.
Okay. So that's that really hits home. I think as someone who's worked in the food industry, all of my life, that really strikes a chord with me. But also there's a part of me that also feels that the food industry is already very innovative. And therefore my question, I suppose, to you both is, why is a different approach required to deliver step change in and around sustainability and health?
I can say something about that now and then hand over to Chris, who will have a lot to say about this, I'm sure. But what I'll say about the food system is, in terms of decarbonisation, the food system's decarbonised at about a third of the rate of the wider economy.
Yeah.
So in terms of sustainability, that we do a reasonable job, but there is a lot of work to do. Largely that's because of agriculture and the lack of changes in agriculture, but food manufacturing and the food market impacts on that sort of mix of agricultural systems. So there is work to do. We are very good at innovating, but perhaps there's a lot of large incumbents, and I think that the rate of innovation could be a lot faster. But I mean, Chris works with other sort of in other sectors and knows a lot more about that sort of wider innovation landscape than I do.
Chris,
yeah,
what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think the thing for me is I wouldn't doubt any given industry has a certain level of innovation, but it's almost redefining the problem. I mean, we've talked about the problems there, but it's bringing fresh insights and perspectives. I'll give just one tiny example in a related industry. So there's a problem for young people in particular with who are victims of a burn, who have a dressing that has to be changed regularly and is incredibly painful to change. Now, the innovation, if you were within health, you would say, right, let's try and improve the dressing.
Yeah.
Or try and make it so that we didn't have to change it as often. But what we found with computer scientists coming to the problem, they brought virtual reality and created games that distracts the patient whilst they're having their dressing changed.
Wow.
And they literally are not aware that the dressing is being changed. It's so distracted. So they brought a behavioral psychological approach, used it with computer science, and suddenly the problem has been changed, and therefore the solution has been changed. And it's that kind of thinking where someone comes in from left field and says, yeah, that might be on the surface the issue, but I've got a different way of looking at it and the solutions I can bring. And then also you do get sometimes within accelerators this combinatorial innovation, which is a fancy way of saying two people collaborate, or two groups or two companies with different perspectives, and they evolve a kind of third perspective on it. And it's that sort of innovation cauldron, if you like. It's, you know, and that's what we need. We need that sort of swirl of ideas, breaking down assumptions, and that's what this kind of program can bring to what are agreed as, you know, major problems of the time.
No, that's so exciting to hear, I have to say. And it also feels like it's going to be the place for bringing startups, new ideas, entrepreneurs together as well. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's kind of sister accelerators to this one, focusing on sport, well-being, child health tech. And what you see in there is companies from all over the world, you know, responding. It's been made easier for them to connect virtually as well.
Yeah.
But some of the kind of support that Anthony was talking about is still best done physically, and that's why it's great having a site that I know we'll probably talk about in a bit more detail later.
Yeah.
But, you know, having a place where people can come and just be exposed to things. And also I was talking to one company that's really interested in getting involved with us last week, and they were just excited by the thought of being around like-minded folk. It's a totally different industry.
Yeah.
But I think it's that openness and that open, inclusive innovation. I'm trying not to say the word vibe, but, you know, that sort of thing.
Energy, yeah.
Yeah, is absolutely critical. And it's not just a sort of nice thing these days. It's absolutely essential. And we see that in industries being disrupted all the time by new thinking.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of moments ago about the location, which is obviously the Olympic Legacy Park in Sheffield. Can you tell us a bit more about the park and the role that the park plays in the local community as well? Yeah,
so this is effectively a brownfield site. Historically, it was a massive steelworks, and then it became the Don Valley Stadium where Jessica Ennis used to train.
Yeah.
It's got the English Institute of Sport, so it has I think there was 17 medalists from Tokyo train on the site.
Yeah.
So it's this strange mix of a kind of, it's in a very disadvantaged part of town, but it's like a regeneration site. It's at about, say, £100 million of government investments, and it's now due to get about 100 million of private investments, because all of these investors are seeing the value in the kind of innovations that come through. It started effectively as an elite athlete site.
Yeah.
And those insights are now being used in population health. And that sort of pathway has now created other pathways for related industry areas. And that's the kind of conversation I had with Anthony, because on this site, there's the National Centre of Excellence for Food Engineering.
Yeah. Wow.
That opened a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
And so we hooked up and started sharing ideas about, you know, what we wanted to achieve. And so, if you like, I bring the procedural essence of the thing, and Anthony brings the substantive, and it's that sort of coming together. And the site is a backdrop to that. It's important, but it's more what happens on the site than the buildings and all the investments going in.
What a hugely exciting space, Anthony. But what's any thoughts or builds on that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it is a fantastic space. It's a fantastic place to go and visit. The National Centre of Excellence for Food Engineering is an incredible facility. It really is, and that's on the site. So you've got this exciting sort of area. And what I'd say is that, you know, the site is about improving. It's about improving health. It's about getting people moving. It's about exercise. But, you know, what we say very much is, and I'm sure most people listening would agree, food's just such an important part of that. You know, like I said about you can't sort of deal with sustainability without thinking about food. You certainly can't deal with sort of population health without thinking about improving foods and improving diet. So, you know, having a food accelerator within this complex, I think, is you know, incredibly exciting for the people working in innovation in food, but it's also incredibly important if you're serious about addressing population health issues and things like sports performance as well. You know, people will know that diet is so important in that.
I mean, Charles, if I could just jump in, just one last point on the site. There is also an academy and a technical college. So effectively, a young person can come onto the site at the age of 3, go through a full education program and end up doing a PhD and then getting a job with one of the tech companies.
That's extraordinary.
But what's intriguing about that is, in addition to a kind of social mobility activity, the kind of innovations that we might trial here would best be in collaboration with those young people.
Yeah.
You know, who are open, because they're not closed to the future. They're totally open to the future.
Yeah.
We have these kind of set views, even when we're innovators, we're innovating from a place of set views. And so there's that kind of almost intellectual and energy churn that we can tap into. And, you know, these young folk are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And it is a site of aspiration, inspiration. It's actually quite tiring to work there, if I'm honest, because it's so stimulating.
I feel like I almost want to stop this and get in the car, to be honest. It sounds like absolutely the place you want to be. Which other, and you've kind of alluded to this, but what are the other industries that come together on the Olympic Legacy Park, and how do you see them perhaps feeding into the work of the Sustainable Healthy Food Accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, there's already things like robotics, and within the Centre of Excellence, there's already those kind of Industry 4.0 insights.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's behavioural scientists, there's sports scientists who work with every team in Team GB. Another related programme, Anthony alluded there to nutrition with both elite and population health. There's a programme on the site in collaboration with a cancer charity, so that when you're diagnosed with particular cancers, you can come to the site and go through a 3-point program, which is about your physical resilience, your mental resilience, and your nutritional, you know, your diet and that and its impact on those other 2 things. So you know, so we have those kind of insights as well, and different industries coming together. But also coming onto the site shortly is a Centre for Child Health Technology. There's certain big tech companies who you can guess the names of are getting very interested in getting involved in that.
Yeah. Wow.
We already have also Canon Medical are putting 15 million into building an AI diagnostic suite.
Yeah.
But also they're building alongside that a community basketball arena.
Wow.
So again, this you mentioned about community. This is not a gated community.
No.
This is an open, inclusive innovation zone, and you know, at times that does create an interesting dynamic, because innovation centres and areas tend to be, you know, nobody's allowed in.
No, they're closed.
But we believe in it being a living place that's going to have an economic and social impact way beyond really what it should do as a geographic site.
Yeah, it's almost punching above its weight, really, isn't it? Well, that's the bigger plan for it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, in your experience, what are some of the transferable learnings from the way that other industries innovate that will be applied through this incubator?
Yeah, I think, and I know Anthony's very preoccupied with this. I think this kind of regulatory issue is a key one. So especially if you bring in innovators from outside of the sector and outside of their conventional approaches that we might be familiar with more with the incumbents, you have to give them a pathway, but you also have to. It is a sort of educational piece about regulation, because you know most of us go whenever we're faced with any regulation. I won't mention the government at this point, but you know there's that sense of guiding people through. And sometimes, you know, their innovations come fully formed. They're incredibly relevant, but they don't understand, or they don't get the significance of that. So sometimes it is about that. Sometimes it is about market access and understanding, you know, how to approach a big supplier or retailer. So it's that kind of interpretive function, I think, is key. But also the other side of it is, you know, I have chief execs sitting on mentor workshops with these innovators. And you know, we launched the first accelerator in March 2020, just as the pandemic hit. But actually that created a sort of online community. And what we saw was you'd have a group chief exec sat with an innovator. And it was puzzling me. I thought, why is this person who his diary is a nightmare, making a little bit of time for this innovator? So I had a word with him, quite, you know, sort of off screen. And I said, you know, David, why are you putting your time in? He said, look, this is the most efficient way of finding out what's out there, getting some interesting ideas, and ultimately, I'm wondering whether to take a stake or even buy this innovator's company. Yeah. And it's that intriguing coming together of different parts of an industry and like-minded folk, because everybody's out there, because everybody knows every industry now is subject to disruption. Yeah. And they need to have some sense of where that disruption might be coming from, how it might work in their favor. So there's all these kind of dynamics, and it sounds a lot, you know, in a relatively small kind of initiative, but it does have that kind of amplifying and magnifying effect. And there's a lot of benefits to being involved. Definitely.
And in the work that you've seen across other industries, is there a framework, I suppose, for innovation that you feel is a kind of emerging from, you know, bringing together the learnings from different industries?
Yeah, and I think at its heart, and I've alluded to this, I suppose, already, is this idea of breaking assumptions, and you have to support. You have to support the innovators to challenge those assumptions, but you also, I think it is this interpretive thing. It's bringing together groups that speak very different languages and have very different preoccupations. And so we're working with a government agency at the moment to create, and I'm very reluctant to say this because the buzzword bingoists will have their pens ready on this one, but we're creating a rotational internship for place-based innovation ecosystem leadership. Now, that's a fancy way of saying when you've got lots of different actors in a single place, if you can work around them and understand where they're all coming from, then you can help lead innovation more broadly. So we are seriously working with a government agency on piloting that. Yeah. And that's because, you know, everybody within a pathway sees things slightly differently, even if they're all after the same goal. Yeah. And I think that's another key element of the framework that we're pushing.
No, that's brilliant. And thanks for simplifying that and bringing it to life for us in terms of what that means. Again, hugely exciting, and can completely resonate with the fact that even though you're all moving in the same direction, everyone's got a slightly different perspective, and yeah, that needs to be capitalized and built upon. Anthony, anything that you'd add to that?
No, it's a very good summary. I mean, we're, you know, obviously, as Chris said, we're providing that sort of, we have the ability to provide that regulatory support and all those things that people don't, you know, the number of times you listen to sort of innovators speaking, and as a sort of gnarled old sort of food industry person, you sat there going, oh god, they haven't thought about that, that's going to take 5 years. You know, we provide that sort of support, but also I will say for Chefs Union, we also remind people that if you're going to have groundbreaking food innovation, it needs to taste good too, you know, needs to be sort of compelling for consumers, which people often forget, and you know, I can help, and the other chefs involved can help bring ingredients, products, technologies to life as living food products, which you can then show to investors, show to retailers, show to show to consumers. So it's really bringing the people from different sectors into this sort of into the food space, and making them understand that it's all about compelling products that consumers enjoy.
And that brings us nicely on to actually one of the things I wanted to ask you. We've talked quite a lot about the incubator at a higher level, but how practically will the facility work, and what kind of services will it offer?
Yeah, so to give you an example of what's already happened and is happening, so the procedure is a global call out, and then companies land. They can land either physically or virtually in a space, and we have spaces on the site. They don't necessarily have to kind of take up residence, but often they find an advantage in having some kind of trading address linked to an innovation park like this.
Yeah,
and then you build individual support packages around them. So a typical kind of ratio is between, say, 30 and 100,000 pounds of either cash or in-kind support.
Yeah.
Some companies ask for equity stakes for that money. Others don't want you to take equity stake at all. And that's an interesting question, because of course, if you notionally take an equity stake with that money, they can then claim a market capitalization on the back of it. The implied market capitalization. So that gives them value in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
But that sort of tailored package is put together, and then also there's a kind of exit pathway as well, because it may be that it's appropriate for them to seek investment or not. In some cases, they will have, some of them already have sales. So we're not talking about just startups. Some might have already had sales and investment in another part of the business, but this is a new kind of strand to what they're doing. So it might be about investment, or it might be about innovation government funding.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it might be teaming them up with a buyer who says, look, let's work on this further. So there's lots of different exit points, driven by whatever the bespoke package was put together.
No, brilliant. Anthony, anything just to build on that from a Fruition Foods perspective?
No, I mean it is very bespoke in terms of the services we offer, and Fruition we're a group of consultants, and have a number of sort of associates in pretty much every area of food you can imagine. Intellectual property, regulatory, nutrition, culinary, obviously with me, and food engineering challenges. We are going to be, broadly, we're looking at focusing on people who are looking at addressing big food engineering challenges, with the food engineering background within the site, and also, the region. I mean, Sheffield has that sort of area of the UK has a huge number of food businesses. Absolutely. And a huge amount of expertise in food engineering, and that's what we really want to capitalize on. So it's those sort of those food engineering type challenges that we're going to be looking to focus on. People perhaps, I mean, obviously, I don't want to sort of predict what sort of areas people working in are going to come to us, because we want innovation, we want stuff we haven't thought of more than what we are thinking of. But plant-based fermented foods, those sort of technologies are things we can definitely support on as well. Extrusion and various sort of plant protein things. But it's really going to be looking for stuff that we haven't thought of more than anything. And how we can support in building those into real businesses which are more ready for the market.
Charles, if I can just jump in as well. It's funny, Anthony mentioning the context and the businesses that are already in this region. So we had interest from a Cambridge-based tech company, and they came up and they were really interested on the sort of innovation side, working with the sports scientists, working with computer engineers and this kind of thing. If you like, the kind of traditional innovation stuff, but also what they were really interested in was relocating, and they've since opened an office in Sheffield, because as they put it, there's still real engineers in Sheffield. And what they meant by that was every engineer in Cambridge is now a consultant engineer.
Yeah.
Because of course they can charge much bigger fees. They don't have to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
But of course you can't find a real engineer. So they wanted real engineers to make things for them.
Yeah.
And access productive capacity. And that's another thing that I think this one and others have started to drive. It's the reshoring and manufacturing capacity.
Yeah.
In related industries. And I think we're going to see more of that, especially as government policy shifts towards that post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Securing supply lines much more than we have been focusing on. And
I don't wish to make it political in any way, but is there a levelling up element within this?
Yes, there is. And funnily enough, last week I was contacted by another government who wanted to get involved because the innovation, and this is at the heart of the levelling up white paper. Innovation is the way to drive key elements of regeneration. Linked to that is the skills. Hence, I talked about the skills providers on the site. And I was told that someone in Whitehall said that we were levelling up in action the other day. And we have some visitors next week. I've just found out this morning from DLUC, the beautifully named DLUC, Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, who want to come up to the site. So we're very happy to try and influence government policy in the right way. Big supporters of finding a way to maximise levelling up beyond it being a sort of headline initiative.
Yeah. Well, and one of my key questions for you, and I guess it leads on quite nicely from that, is therefore what does success look like? How will you know that you're delivering against your ambition, your purpose, and delivering against levelling up in action?
I think on the first question, because I am trying to avoid being political, on the first question, I think we'll know quite soon after we launch that we've sort of hit home in terms of the kind of stream of interested innovators that we get. So that's one impact, and you do kind of create like a sort of community amongst those. And that in itself can become catalytic for other changes. But then it's seeing where we can get to with those innovations and the kind of impacts. And some things you've got to play a longer game than others. But I think, when maybe we come back and see in a year, 18 months and say, look, we've got these kind of examples. But, what I keep finding is we make progress on these kind of things and then you think, right, it's time to go bigger now. And this can really scale, and this could have a significant impact, not just a good impact. So for me, that's how I'll assess whether our efforts have been worthwhile.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Anthony?
As a sort of food developer, you want to see things in the market, don't you? I mean, you want to see products and really innovative things making a difference, and being eaten and enjoyed by consumers. So that's all the big test for me. But sort of more broadly, I'd really like to see this region. It's a region I really believe in. I worked here I worked up in this sort of region for many years, and I wanted to see it as a hub for food innovation and somewhere where we think of, when we think about food innovation, we say, this sort of hub around Sheffield is really doing amazing things. And also, perhaps as well to look at that as being a model to roll out, around the country. I can see there being sort of similar regional hubs in different areas, which have different sort of capabilities, in agriculture perhaps, and then different things. We're looking at big food engineering challenges. So I think you could easily create a model for real genuine food system change, which could be rolled out sort of more regionally. But it's really, for me, it's about Sheffield being a hub, and about, we'll see change in the UK food system by products in market, because if you're not got products in market, then you're not really impacting consumer choice.
And this brings me to, I suppose, to the question. I'm hugely excited by what you're saying, as I'm sure the entire in conversation with audience will be. But I come to the question: how is this funded? You know, what this is clear. There's a cost to bringing all of this together. So what's the funding model for it?
So some of the accelerators originally had government funding.
Yeah.
But what we've started to see now is private equity backing these innovations, because they can see, you know, if we talk purely finance, forget the bigger impacts that we're after, but purely finance, they can see deal flow.
Yeah.
So they can see it, you know, this is a de-risking. So typically, you know, if you think we get maybe, say, 300 innovators applying for, you know, say 15, you know, we're less than 1 in 10. So it's a real filter.
Yeah.
And then there's also a pathway. And what we've also seen is investors bringing companies they've already invested in and asking if they could be in the accelerators.
Yeah.
Because it is this process of de-risking. So I would envisage we could probably get, you know, private investment into this. It won't take much to get it started.
Yeah.
And what I keep telling other areas is, you know, just do something that shows that you can make something happen.
Yeah.
And that's I think how we're going to go with this one, unless someone comes in with a slug of money, which we're not going to say no to. But it's that sense of, you know, finding a certain level of support, make something happen, and then people start going, I think we need to be in on this.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're seeing that across the piece.
And are you looking for official partners currently? You know, cutting to the chase. Is that what you're looking for at the moment?
Well, certainly what's worked on other ones is 1 or 2 big brand names is very useful.
Yeah.
That gives it a legitimacy and a visibility, but it also gives those brand names a kind of exclusivity.
Yeah.
To get close to the innovators. I'll give way to Anthony on this one as well.
Anthony.
I won't mention anyone. Look, yeah, we are looking for partners.
Yeah.
We're looking for partners in, you know, retailers. We're looking for partners in large manufacturers, large brands. Obviously, we're looking for that sort of connectivity and link up, which is great for us to have that association, as Chris says. And also, as we've mentioned before, it's great for them because, you know, if they're a partner on this, they get involved at really the ultimate sort of cutting edge of innovation involvement. And, you know, to have an association with that in terms of sort of brand is good, but also just to have your personnel and people involved and talking to real innovators is incredibly exciting for any food company. And to be at that sort of, you know, at that point when you're meeting innovators at the beginning of their journey, and you know, how large companies can link up with them and develop with them. And, you know, I mean, we've discussed a lot about why. Hopefully, we've got across why it would be great for any company involved. We're speaking to people, but we're really interested to speak to anyone who wants to get involved and wants to be involved in that capacity. Just, you know, even if it's just sort of an association. But
yeah. So what are cutting to the chase then, what are the types of businesses, the types of entrepreneurs, the types of ideas that you want to attract? And really importantly, if these are people, our businesses, and our entrepreneurs that are in our community, the In Conversation with community, there's 20,000 people out there as part of our community, what should they do and how should they get in touch?
Look, we're looking for entrepreneurs, innovators who are making a healthier, more sustainable food system. And that, you know, I could direct people and say I want this sort of company, but I don't want to. As I said, I'm not sure. You know, the best ideas are the ones we won't have thought of. But so anyone with that sort of, at almost any early stage of that entrepreneurial journey, even perhaps if it's just an idea or a bit of academic research or something like that they think might be, then we'd really like them to come to us. The best, the the current stage, the best way to get in touch is either to sort of people can contact me directly, or we have Fruition Foods website has sort of contact forms that people can get in touch through there. So that's the best way at the moment. We'll be opening up some more sort of official channels for the accelerator fairly soon. Okay. But yeah, I mean, anyway, people want to get in touch. Hopefully, we can share the Fruition Foods and the Olympic Legacy Park websites on to go out with this as well.
And are you looking for, and I think you mentioned it a few moments ago, are you looking for kind of industry experts and mentors to get involved? And if you are, again, what if there are people out there in this audience that want to get involved and feel that they have a skill or an expertise that they can bring to this, how should they reach out?
Yeah, we reach out in the same way. I mean, we're looking for a bank of mentors with different areas of expertise. We have some involved already, but you know, we're really interested in getting people. And as Chris said, you know, it's a great thing to do, you know, to support innovators. It's something we all want to do, but it's also a great experience. You know, it's fantastic to speak to people innovating in that sort of way and learn from them and you know, sort of connect with them early on in their journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was interesting, it's just reminded me actually, we had a very big tech company involved in one of the accelerators, and they put 10 of their staff on as mentors.
Yeah.
And they were specialists in kind of market access, pricing, and that, you know, that kind of thing. But I said, oh, you know, thanks. And again, the chief exec said, no, you're doing me a favor, because you know, they're good, but this will expose them to something different. It will challenge their ways of thinking, not just introduce them to innovations, but just challenge their way of looking at the industry.
Yeah.
And I think fundamentally for me, that's what it comes down to. I know I sound a bit academic when I say that, but it's, you know, the redefinition of how we go about things is the key, whatever industry, whatever challenge. And it's that breaking of assumptions and the recasting of possible solutions that is absolutely the center point of this.
Yeah, reframing the question, isn't it? Yeah.
What I'd add to that as well is, you know, when I say mentors, I don't want people to think they're going to be, you know, sort of working a huge amount of hours with people. I mean, often we're just looking for people to sit down for an hour and give an hour of their time to help people with a particular challenge.
Yeah.
So people might want to get involved more closely, but we're not looking for sort of mentors to work alongside people for a couple of years, you know. And we are also, the other thing we will be looking for reasonably soon actually is to people who want to be involved in the assessment panel, because it's a big filtering operation. We need people with expertise in different areas to really sort of look at the companies approaching and filter them down. So we'll be looking for people perhaps to sort of come on the assessment panel and help us with that, which obviously again is a huge, a bit more of a time commitment probably, but a huge way of learning an enormous amount about innovation out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone in the audience, you've heard the call outs. Get in touch if you're somebody who's got an idea, an early stage startup, a thought, a jumping off point that addresses those human health and sustainability challenges, then get in touch. And similarly, there will be a lot of people out there with those kind of expertise that can bring to the assessment panel, and also mentors as well. So do get in touch. As a last question, I'd really like to circle back round to where we started, which was about purpose and intent. And you two, both from different perspectives, are clearly so passionate, bordering on obsessive about this and what it can bring and how it can change. And I'd just like to ask you from a personal perspective why this is really exciting for you both.
I think to sound like an old hippie, if not now, when, and if not us, then who? Because you know, everybody has to stand up, and I think COP26 has created a kind of sense of everybody has to contribute in whatever ways they can, and this is hopefully my way of having a tiny impact on the future.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris. And yeah, that resonates, and I'm sure will absolutely with the audience. But Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, you know, I've been writing about food systems. I worked in food industry for a long time. I've been writing about food systems for a while as well. And you know, I wrote a trilogy of books about the issues within our food system. And in the third book, you know, in the introduction to the third book, I did say, you know, these are huge problems which need dealing with, and everyone involved in the food system needs to get out there and do something in order to make the food system better. And this is, you know, this is very much my involvement. This is me walking the walk on that, you know, making, you know, actually doing something now that genuinely makes a difference. Food, you know, writing is kind of analysing a problem. This is actual action, which is, you know, we feel is going to make a significant change in our food system. And that sort of step change. I think I also said, you know, we were, some of the big problems, I'm going on quite long on this answer, but some of the big problems in the food system, like increasing the amount of fiber in our diets and increasing the amount of fruit and vegetables we eat, decreasing meat, and those sort of big things. So 50% more fiber we need to eat. Those are big things that are in the national food strategy. You know, we talk a lot about nudges and how we're going to achieve that by making small sort of behavioural changes. But you know, as I said in my book, I think we're beyond the stage of needing nudges. The food system needs a bloody great shove, and that's going to come from innovators, and it's going to come from people making step changes. So supporting that, I think, is the most important thing that, you know, I personally can do to make a big change in the food system.
Thank you very much. Look, this concludes this episode of the Food People in conversation with Chris Anthony on behalf of us all at the Food People and the In Conversation with audience. Thanks firstly for joining me, but also for sharing this story, and probably most importantly for choosing to launch the Sustainable Healthy Foods Accelerator in Sheffield on the Food People's In Conversation with. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I certainly feel so inspired and motivated by what you've got to say, and how bringing together these expertise, these ideas, these disciplines at the Olympic Legacy Park in Sheffield can shift the future of food and drink. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today.
Thanks, Charles. We'll put you down as a mentor then.
Indeed. Please do that. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
So do join our TFP community for the details of our latest In Conversation with episodes, as well as the latest free to access food and drink trends foresight. Visit thefoodpeople.co.uk and complete your details at the footer of the page. On behalf of Chris, Anthony and myself, thank you so much for listening to the Food People in Conversation with. And rather aptly after this one, I leave you with just one question. How are you shifting the future of food and drink? Thanks for listening.